now. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, you can, but you are not sharing your video.
My video.
Yeah,
What's wrong? Sorry, give me 2 minutes. Let me
your
start.
camera. Put on your
Oh,
camera.
okay. I'm supposed to put on my camera. Oh, okay. Okay. Can you see my camera now? Okay, so let me continue. So, introduction to CSS animation. What is CSS? CSS is a cascading style sheet, and this is how we style HTML documents. In a website, the elements you see on the website, they are written using HTML. Then we style it using CSS. For instance, in my slide here, this text is written with HTML. Then the color is given to it because of the CSS styling. So animation is how an element gradually changes state or style from one position to another. Like the demonstration, the video I was trying to play earlier. Let me show you an example here. Something I was working on. So the way this box changes position and color at one point to another point is what referred to as animation. Animated, although it's simple, but that is the basics of animation. So CSS animation, it is how designers or developers add animation by editing the CSS code of their website. In this way, rather than putting GIF images or videos on your website or putting videos, you can just write code, and it makes the website more efficient and less bulkier. Because if you input code on your website, it makes it heavier and less efficient in your build. So CSS allows us to have more efficient websites. So that's how. And so let's begin. To use to make animations on your website, and the first thing to do when is to give it an animation name. And all this, you give it animation name, then you give it a duration, you give it a delay, iteration count. You don't have to give it all of it, but things like name, you have to give the animation a name, and you have to give it a duration. Duration simply states how long the animation will last. So without those properties, the animation will not run. So the other ones are optional, but the name and the duration has to be stated. And the keyframe property, um, you have to also animations are written using keyframes. The keyframe state allows us to tell the animation that so we have a start, what an element looks like at the start of an animation, and we have what it will look like at the end of the animation. So the keyframe allow us state that this is what the animation will look like at the start. Then we can also break the entire process of the animation into stages, like 25%, 50%, 25% if animation is going to last for 4 seconds. 25% means the animation at 25%, that means at the end of 1 second, this is what the animation will look like that, like that. If an animation is lasting for 100 seconds, at 25% means at 25 seconds, this is what the animation will look like. So these are the properties we'll be setting value for. So the first thing is to give the animation a name. Then you can give it a keyframe and say that after stating the name of the animation. So for this example, we'll be using the animation name example. The animation name example. Then animation duration, how long the animation will last. 4 seconds. This is the code here for the animation I was showing you, or the animation I showed earlier. Then because what we are trying to animate is a div, the box where that was moving earlier has a width of 100 pixels, height of position is relative so that we can work with it. Then that's the background color of red. So after stating the animation color, the animation duration, and the animation name, then we state the keyframes. We are telling we're telling CSS that at 0%, this is what the box, the red box looks like. So it stays red. That's the background color of red. Then the position it will be in, just like XY. So it will be at 0%, 0 pixels, then left, then 0 pixel, sorry, 0 pixels top. Then at 25%, that's the background color of yellow. So it changes CSS. The animation changes from red to yellow at 25%. Then it moves from the position of 0 pixels to the position of 200 pixels. Then at 50%, like that, it changes. So this is what at the end it's supposed to have a background color of red. And to be at a position of 0 pixels and top of 0 pixels. So this is what the animation will look like from the code goes through to so it goes from red to yellow to green to blue, then back to red in 4 seconds because we gave it a name and we gave it a duration of 4 seconds. So talking about the other properties, we can also set the delay property. We can give the animation delay, which means that we tell the once the web page is active or the animation is active, the delay property allows the animation to wait for a particular amount of time before starting the animation. So in our example here, after giving the name and the duration, we'll give it an animation delay of 2 seconds. Negative values are also allowed. That means you can give it a duration of also minus 2 seconds. Minus 2 seconds. So once you give it a negative value, it means that the animation will run in such a manner that it will act like it has been animating before. Once you open the web page, it will act like it has been animating before it comes into view. So you can also do that. Then let's start. In this example here, 4 seconds, it's going to wait for 2 seconds and it becomes active. So that is how we use the animation delay property. So we can also set the direction of an animation. We can ask an animation to be normal, we can ask it to be reverse, we can ask an animation to be alternate or alternate reverse. So if it is normal, it means the animation plays forward normally, the way I just said. But if you set an animation direction property to reverse, it plays in the reverse direction, it plays backwards. So rather than going from red to yellow like you done that time, it starts from the back and goes forward. So if you set the property to alternate, it starts from forward back, then backward forward. So it goes in that direction. Then alternate reverse means it plays backwards first, then it plays forward next. So it is the opposite of alternate. So in this example, the animation direction is set to alternate, and this is what it looks like. So you see, so it's going forward then backwards. So that's the alternate property or alternate value for the animation direction property. Another property you can set is the animation timing function. This you can this affects the behavior or the speed curve of the animation. And you can ask animation. So for instance, in the video I showed earlier, the first video I put before this at the start of this presentation, you could see that the animation, the figure or the object was going up, then slows down, then it goes up, slows down, then picks speed again. It is done with the animation timing property. You can ask an animation to simply easy. That means the animation starts with a slow start, then picks speed. And you can say ease out. That means at the end of the animation, it now slows down. Or you can say easing out, specify a slow start and slow end. That means at the start it's slow, then at the middle it's quick speed, then at the end it slows down again. Or you can just use the quick bezier, and that allows you it's a curve. Then you can tweak the curve how you want the animation to run. So for this example here, we've asked the animation to easy. So it's going to start slowly, then quick speed. Okay. So that was it there. So the fact that the animation is only running for 4 seconds, that is why. Let me start all over again. That is why you won't really notice it, because that 4 seconds means the speed it will slow down for about a second, then quick speed for the remaining 3 seconds. So it might not be as noticeable as if it was running for longer. So this is what is into this thing and quick speed. So another finally or the last property you can specify when making an animation is the animation fill mode. So the animation fill mode allows us is the only function or the only property that allows us edit um, the elements before the first keyframe and after the first keyframe. So the animation fill mode specifies a style for the target element when the animation is not playing. So before it starts, after it ends or both, it can have the following values: none. So you don't have to give it a value. That means that's the default value. Do not apply any styles to the element before or after its execution. Or you can set the animation field mode to forward. That means the element will retain the style value that is set by the last keyframe. So like in our animation earlier, that it started from red, then ends on red. That is what forwards is. Then if you set it to backwards, that means the element would when it goes from red to green to yellow then to blue, the element property will stay at that blue because we have set it to stay in backwards. Okay, change. Then we can also set it to both. That means it will follow both the rules. The animation will follow the rules for both forwards and backward, extending the animation properties in both directions. Then finally, all this, rather than writing it and making our code bulky, we can just state it on a single line and make your code simpler and shorter by using the animation shorthand property. So after you have the bit, after setting the property animation, you just state the name, give it the duration, the iteration count, the direction, the delay, and all the values you want to set. You put it like that. So and that is all concerning my presentation and introduction to CSS. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that presentation. Okay. Does anybody have question? Does anybody have question for you? Okay, please.
Is
Okay.
there any question?
Samuel, you can just ask anybody a question. Check the passport, please.
Okay. I can't see the people present. Let me stop sharing my screen. Okay.
This is the first
Okay.
amendment.
Who understands how the what the animation iteration count does?
Check the list.
Should I pick a person?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Leonard Odune. Leonard, how does the animation iteration count work?
If Renan is available.
Damilare, can answer the question. Damilare Edo. Edo. I don't think Damilare is available. Okay.
Sorry, what is the question again?
I was asking how the I was asking you to explain how the animation iteration count works.
The
What's
what?
the function? What does it do? animation and iteration count.
Okay.
Did you hear me? My internet is going on and off. Okay, so let me just take that again. The animation iteration count just states how many times the animation will run for. So if you state the animation iteration count to 8, that means the animation runs 8 times from start to finish. It goes 8 times, first from the start to the end, from the start to the end, 8 times. So that is what that function does.
All right. Thank you. Ijoma Jacob, you can come up now. Jacob.
Amir, can you see my screen?
Yeah. You have to turn on your camera.
Come in. I've shared my screen.
Yeah, we can see your
Okay.
screen. You have to turn your camera.
Okay. Can you see me? Can you see my camera? Hello?
No, we can't.
We can't.
Yeah, I can see your camera now. All right, go ahead.
We can now
Okay,
see
talking
you.
of, can you see my okay? You can see my screen and the camera. All right, so
Yes.
today we want to look at the Angular framework. And if they start, I want to welcome all of us to the seminar. Then next, we'll look at exploring the Angular framework. Exploring the Angular framework. Let me give it a full screen. So, exploring the Angular framework, that's the topic. Then we'll look at what Angular is all about. An introduction is a modern developer's platform which you can build apps that is a cross platform. Then what will be our objectives? Look at what is Angular. Then look at what is Angularjs. Then the difference between Angular and Angularjs. Then look at the technical side of Angular, the CLI, the commands, just a few of them. Then the main building blocks of Angular. Now the question is, what is Angular framework? It's a TypeScript-based free and open source application led by the Angular team at Google. And TypeScript in the sense that it's written with TypeScript and is powerful enough to develop complex single page web application. And it's easy to learn. That is with concentration. And aside from that, it's also one of the hottest frameworks on the web now. So then the next, what's AngularJS? Well, I'm looking at AngularJS because they are both looks alike. That's why I have to define it separately and also try to contrast between the both of them. So AngularJS is actually a JavaScript based open source framework as well. Front end for front end purposes, and also maintained by the same Google and some communities of individuals and corporations. Now, if you look at what we have before us here, so what's the difference between these two? Leonard, is Leonard on?
No, it's not fair to work.
Is Leonard on?
It's not fair to work. Well,
Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead, who's the next person? Leonard is not available.
Okay. Mr. Ephraim, is Mr. Ephraim around?
Are you asking for
Yes.
Ephraim?
Who can tell me? Yes. Or anybody can tell us the difference between these two, the name of one and the name of the other. Anybody there can just help us.
A chimpanzee and a monkey.
Which one? The left one or the right one is the chimpanzee?
The chimpanzee
Okay,
is the one on the right.
Yes, yes. Why the other one is, but there's some subtle difference and similarities with them as well. So that's how Angular and AngularJS seems to look like. The architecture, the language, the mobile, the expression syntax, dependency, injection, routing, and management. These are the key areas where there's contrast between AngularJS and Angular. But the most pronounced one is that AngularJS is not mobile friendly, but Angular is mobile friendly. You can build mobile devices, mobile apps with Angular. And also one is AngularJS is based on language, is JavaScript based. While TypeScript, Angular is a TypeScript based framework. So they use a component and the rest. But in terms of architecture, AngularJS works on model view controller design, while Angular works on the component and directives. All right, if you jump down to the expression syntax, you see that it binds with a double curly braces, which you can find here. It binds data, sorry, it binds data and model. Meanwhile, the Angular uses brackets and block brackets attributes of bind data between view and the model. So the question now is why Angular is one of the fastest and most popular open source web app framework today. It's quite essential for developers to have a proper grip of it and use it because of it's a bit sophisticated and it's fast in its execution of files and the rest. All right, let's look at just the technical side of the Angular, the CLI, the commands, and the comforts that comes with it. Of course, we're talking about CLI, we're talking about the command line interface. This is where we get our hands dirty. It's the engine part of it, if I may use that language. It's where we issue commands. Then the interface, still on the command line interface, the CLI, it's more like a parade ground where commands are issued. We don't give suggestions. Suggestions are not given here. It's commands. And once the commands are given, the programs run. Then look at some of the commands. We have some basic commands, intermediate commands, and advanced commands. And it's grouped in this way in the sense that it's basic for you to come into Angular and starting up to build application. These are the basic command and the command you have to pick up with. Then as you progress in your proficiency, you discover that you are going beyond the basic command. You are already using the intermediate commands. Then as you proceed to expertise, you discover that you just find yourself in the advanced command, using the advanced commands as well. All right, so these are some of the basic commands. How we peg it at the basic command here, the ng version, the ng help, the version, ng version will also give us the Angular version. Then the ng help also help us to give, peradventure, you don't know what the command to use, you can give an ng help to give you the list of commands available. Then you want to create a new component, the ng new component, ng new my app name is there. That is if you want to create a new app. Then the ng generate, of course, you can use the generate different basic building blocks of Angular, component directives, and the rest. Then the ng build, used to build the Angular app that we can serve with ng serve, serving it on the local server, local development server with ng serve. Then linting and testing is also there for the command as well. So we'll just stay on the architecture. This is a brief architecture for the Angular framework. Making note of the templates and the component, interchanging. On this side is event binding. On the other side are property binding. Property binding is we should just data to the objects, some data in an object form that has properties and value. They can be bind from template to the component, from component to template rather. They can bind the events from templates to the component. Then the directives are
You're muted. Ijeman.
so where did I want the same page.
Yeah, the main
Okay.
building.
Okay, the main building blocks. The Angular module is one of the major building blocks of Angular, and it is thought of as a declaration of all things that will be used in Angular application. It comprises of everything. An example is app module. And this is generated during when we issue an Angular command from the CLI, and it contains everything that is required for every application to work. So we could go to the next one. The component is a basic building block for Angular. Every Angular application has component. There's a root component, then there's additional components on top of the root component, and it's one of the basic building blocks of Angular application, and it's very, very important. We define logic here, business logics. Data are found in the components as well. Then the template is more or less like a blueprint for just like a plan, a blueprint that every other web page will be rendered from. So a template is part of a component that renders the interface to the users. And we have two types of them, inline template and the external template. Inline template in the sense that the template is defined inside the component itself, while the external component template, rather, the logic, the template is not inside the component, it's external. We have to now import it into the Angular component itself. Of course, go with a URL for that to be possible. Then the metadata is just a way of processing the class and the components together, so that the class will have to function as a component when it is needed. Sorry, there was some change in power. Then the data binding. In this place, data is being bound to the components and it's rendered as a view. This is the art of binding components to the HTML, which is the view. It is quite helpful when you bind, when you build dynamic pages, you need to update the UI with some new data. In that case, your UI is being connected to the HTML, and once it's connected, whether it's the template is external, with data binding, those data are bound into the template that is providing the data that the template needs to render to the users themselves. So that's how, just as the name implies, data binding, data is being bound to the HTML. So directive, this more or less an instruction given to the DOM. It's an instruction given to the DOM. It's used to manipulate behavior and appearance of elements on the DOM. Of course, with the use of properties and the values. The right properties anyway. It's just an instruction. Just as to give instruction to people, I know that this is the rule of directive. Then services. This helps for interconnection between components to communicate with each component to communicate with another component. This is the role of services, and it's very, very important in Angular application. It's just a piece of code that is used to perform specific tasks. Services can be in a component, but also services for best practices. It's advised that services are outside the component. And if services are outside the component, it helps maintainability. It helps usability for you to be able to reuse your service in each of the components. Otherwise, if you put some services in each component, by the time you have about 10 components, you discover that the same code, similar code are about 10 components. When you want to maintain the code base, you now have to be editing each template, each component, one after the other. Meanwhile, what is inside, they are similar. But with the help of services, it is placed as an external file itself. Then it serves each of these components when it is needed. So that is it. It helps maintainability. It helps ability to reuse code for the respective component. So services and Angular are injected into application using dependency injection mechanism. So the next one is dependency injection. Just as the name implies, giving an injection for a particular purpose. In Angular, injections are made. It's a process of passing dependency object, just like in normal mathematics, we have dependent variables and independent variable, X and Y axis. You know that Y is dependent on X, YX is just an independent variable. So there are some objects that are dependent on another object. And for them to be used, they need to be injected into the object to be able to, so that they can use it. So they are, the object one is dependent on the other, while the other one is independent. So passing it at that point in time from one object to the other is just what we regard as dependency injection. And it is services that is being done in this way. So inject services in the respective components.
You're not managing your time.
Sir, my time is up.
Yeah, you're not managing your time. It's almost time for the stand up.
Okay.
You can just use the rest of the time to ask questions if you have any.
Okay, sir.
I don't have questions.
So quickly, these are summary. And let's take the questions. Angular framework is based on one of the following programming languages: A, JavaScript, Java; B, JavaScript; C, CocoaScript; D, CoffeeScript; E, TypeScript. Mr. Shiki? TypeScript. Thank you very much. The next one, Angular framework is not suited for Dash development. A, single page application; B, progressive web application; static web application; dynamic web pages; and mobile application. The answer. Who is knows the answer? Number 2.
Mobile application.
Can you see my screen?
Mobile application.
I didn't hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you. Mobile application.
No.
Oh no.
No. It's static web pages. Static web pages. It's static web pages, not a mobile application. It's well suited for a mobile application. The next one is to create new components in Angular. Which of the following command we do just that? Which of the following command will do that?
Okay.
ng create component,
Next one.
ng create component name.
Thank you very much. That's correct. The next one, the main building blocks of Angular framework are these except. Anybody has the answer?
Components. Components.
No. Components are a part of Angular framework. No, directive is part.
I can't see the last one. No.
Dependency injection, the last one, E,
What's
is
the last
dependency injection.
one?
Dependency injection, E, is the last one. Actually, the answer here is dynamic switch. Is D, dynamic switch. All right, our conclusion is the model developers platform for every developer. Any question?
Thank you everyone for attending this session. I wish you a good day.